Hey there! Welcome to saas.unbound, brought to you by saas.group. I'm your host, Dana, and this is the show where we chat with inspiring founders and experts to get an inside scoop on how they made their business a success. And today with me is János, co-founder of Atriba, a cross-channel digital marketing management platform based on data-driven attribution modeling to make marketing more transparent and help brands become independent of the big advertising platforms. And I'm really excited to see you here and learn how you're doing it.
Hi Anna, thanks for having me on the show. Really excited to be here and discuss with you.
Sure, awesome. All right. Well, I guess first things first. Maybe let's dig a little bit into your background and how you came to building the company in the first place.
Yeah, sure. So I studied computer science at some time way back and was always fascinated by this promise of data science to somehow be able to look into the future, predict stuff. So I didn't develop to be a kind of typical software engineer, but was always interested into using data to increase the quality of decision making. And ultimately, that led me to my first job at the Otto Group. Some of you might know this, one of the biggest e-commerce businesses in Europe, at least. And there I started really in a area where we used data to optimize the send out of catalogs. And so rather offline sort of optimization problem with machine learning and data science. And that was very fascinating because we then also obviously at some stage started optimizing the online part of the business with machine learning in terms of recommendations. And at some stage, I kind of got tired of the whole corporate environment, went to, at that time, a very new startup, which was called OpenBC then, and then turned to be Xing, as some of you might know it. I started there when Xing and LinkedIn were approximately the same size, both had around 2.5 million members. And that was also very exciting times because they just done their IPO. So Xing has done their IPO way before LinkedIn had. And I basically built the customer intelligence team, and we did stuff like finding out who's the most valuable member on the platform, so who's the most connected member. We used things such as the Google PageRank algorithm to find that out. And at some stage, I figured that I want to move do something completely different. So I did an MBA in Cape Town, South Africa, 2010. So the World Cup was going on there and a lot of kite surfing. And I also studied for my MBA. So managed to complete my MBA. Some saw it as a miracle. At least my colleagues my colleagues from the studies were sometimes wondering how I managed to get it done while spending so much time on the water. It was really
A good
amazing times.
work-life balance.
Yeah, good. Also, best work-life balance I ever had, to be honest. So I basically had so school started at, I don't know, 7 or something like that. Then right after it, I went to the beach, kite surfed when the wind and weather and waves were perfect. Had some dinner and then studied till, I don't know, 11 or midnight. And then same stuff again next day. Awesome. Was really great.
Sounds
In
great.
the end, yeah, it was amazing times. And at some stage, I had to move back to Germany. Had to get rid of my MBA debt, so to say, financially, and started working at an online marketing agency. And that's where I really first got touched with the topic of marketing attribution and applying all the data that was around in online marketing to really optimize marketing. And that's also kind of where I, kind of understood the potential of what we are currently doing with Atriba, of how to use data and the massive amounts of data available for optimizing marketing decisions. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Sounds perfect. But as always, founders talk about this inspiration, and a lot of people get inspired. Not a lot of people build businesses out of it. So, how did it get from from inspiration, from seeing that there is a potential, to actually building something and getting your first customer?
Yeah, great question. Because even I saw, that there is a potential for this idea. It took me another 3.5 years to eventually jump into the cold water and start building a startup. So back at that stage, I was at Jimdo, the website builder toolkit, so to say. Awesome company, awesome founders, really inspiration also for me to at some stage build my own company. And that's where I met my co-founder. And then we, in 2015, so my first kid was born back in 2010 when I was in Cape Town, my daughter. And then in 2015, my two sons, my twins, were born. And I thought, okay, now with 3 kids, nothing can go wrong
Best time
anymore.
to start.
Best time to go, Hail Mary and just go for it and build a business. Eventually, my main inspiration was, what kind of father figure do I want to be for my kids? Do I want to be an employer, or do I want to, at least show them that I tried to do it? It wasn't about, necessarily having to be successful with it, but what I always try to teach my kids is go for it, try it. Like, it's not, the result doesn't necessarily isn't the most important thing, but what's way more important is that you've tried it, because you don't want to at some stage have the regret of not doing it. And yeah, my father is from Yugoslavia. Maybe the two sons were this thing where I thought, okay, I cannot lose anymore. I have everything I need, and why shouldn't I just build the business? And yeah, I mean, logistically, it was a bit of an effort financially, as you can think about. Back then there was still an accelerator program, Next Media Accelerator here in Hamburg, and there still is the Next Commerce Accelerator. They are also doing an awesome job, but a Next Media Accelerator, we were in the first batch. We got 50,000 to as a kind of kickstart for funding Atriba. And I think what was my tip for every aspiring founder would be to try to get some sense of whether you will actually be able to make revenue of it before you build the whole product. So this, typical lean startup MVP approach, that was really helpful to us. So eventually we didn't build, the whole system with the, dashboarding and the exports that we have nowadays. But what we did instead, we had a company that wanted to test our solution, our MVP. We had them implement a tracking snippet that was sending tracking requests to my co-founder's personal AWS account server. So there was not even a company officially set up. So it sounds a bit bogus, but back then it was possible. And then he sent the data, the tracking logs, to me, the aggregated ones, and I did some magic in Python and did the whole attribution modeling and fed the results into an Excel sheet. And that Excel sheet was our results that the client got. Every 2 weeks they got an updated Excel sheet with the marketing performance report, the cross-channel based one. And
That's
at some
pretty
stage we
cool.
had, yeah, and I mean, it's very MVP, right? It's very it's extremely lean. There's no system in place whatsoever. It was great to figure out if clients find this useful. And I remember this point in time, we were sitting at this company presenting them the results, and then I was so hesitant to ask for it, but at some stage I did. Was like, would you actually be willing to pay for it? Let's say 400 euros per month. And I remember that, and I remember them saying, "Yeah, of course." We were, kind of wondering when you'll ask for it, but yeah, of course we pay. And that was,
Okay.
the first revenue we did without even having funded the company. So that was before we officially founded the company. So, and that was also what the investors, like the first investors, kind of liked about it, that we had revenue really early on, proving the value of what we were doing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's super important. I mean, like you said, it was, yeah, it was maybe possible before. Now there's a bit of a higher threshold to like what you have to go to the market with. But
Yes.
still, like once you get this, like, oh, there it is, there is your value and there is your little aha moment. Yeah, that's kind of all you need to
Exactly.
go with. And then you just have to be fast to like actually build the thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, nowadays, back then, it was again 2015. GDPR wasn't in place. We didn't have to have an official DPA, so data processing agreement. Nowadays, you would have to have all of that, like rightly so, in place because we were gathering personal data. But back then, yeah, it was still possible. But I mean, still, even nowadays, you should really think of: do you actually need a dashboard, or can you just, put it into an Excel first to figure out if it's
Yeah.
valuable for a client? And that mentality we really try to keep on. So when showing new features to clients or to potential clients, we try to really focus on what's the minimal viable thing that we can show to the client to figure out if they find it valuable. We're not always
Mhm.
thinking about how does it like ultimately have to look like in the dashboard, but rather just focus on what's the best way to get valuable feedback from our clients, whether we should actually build this. So that attitude kind of stuck with me. And I think, I mean, there's a lot of dissing of, marketing agencies nowadays, but my marketing agency side or performance agency sides were really valuable in that regard because we always sell products and services. that we didn't have yet. So we always, sell the service. So when I was starting at that agency, when I got back from Cape Town, South Africa, they already sold customer journey analytics and attribution modeling, but they didn't have that service implemented yet. So that was actually my job to build that because they've sold it to some of the biggest clients already. And that attitude, I mean, it's a bit risky. You need to
Yeah.
be, a bit of a risk taker, and sometimes it's a bit difficult to find people willing to go that route. But it's way, I mean, we are, in the end, we are not, building airplanes or saving starving children or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's you need to the higher risk is the way higher risk is being too slow and not innovative enough, and your competitors overtaking you. That's a much higher risk than
Yeah. Yeah.
putting out
Exactly.
something that might be a little bit flawed. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we were talking with Jason Fried about that, like how a lot of founders are like just afraid to put the idea out there because it's
Yes.
maybe not ready, we don't have like the competitive advantage yet. And what he said was, you know, something that you should really be afraid of is people not noticing what you're doing, then, people
Yeah.
noticing that and like doing something about it, because then it's not about your the moat that you're building. It's about the way you're selling and like the value that you're providing for the customers, and then there you can be as different to whoever is your competitor as you can. So great. I really love the mentality that you're talking about. It's kind of what we are striving for at saas group. But
And just
well,
just
yeah.
let me just add to this because it's such an important topic. It's because it's specifically true for the best engineers out there. Because the best
Mhm.
engineers, developers, software engineers, they always have this aspiration of putting out high quality products, and that's detrimental in terms of putting something out that might work. Quality is maybe up to 80%, but not 100%. So it's
Yeah.
a huge act of balance. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. We were in Hamburg actually almost a month ago. There was a Code Talk conference for techies, for coders. And Bridget Harris was doing her speech about how she built You Can Book Me.
Yeah.
And she said like there were so many projects and so many products before that, and they just all went to the bin. And then she asked like who in the audience had done that, because and like you never went to market with it because it wasn't good enough. And I think like 90% of people just raised their hands, and they're all developers.
Mm.
It's just
Yeah.
so it's
Yeah.
just exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, it's not good enough, but you still have to,
Yes.
yeah, try.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay,
True.
but it's been what, 8 years since you're on the market. From that Excel sheet, you went a long way. So, how
Yeah.
did you prioritize? Like, from that first customer, did they have like a great effect on your product roadmap for some time after, or were you able to kind of get more customers right away to see what everyone wants and to kind of not just like build for this one company, but have your vision and then have validation and have different opinions from different customers?
Yeah, so I guess thankfully we've been in this accelerator program and they were really pushing us to focus on sales and acquiring
Hmm.
further customers because otherwise we would have just optimized the product for this one first customer and fallen into this, customization trap, so to say, building the best product as engineers for that particular customer
Yeah.
instead of, focusing on the 80% that are really important for all of the potential clients out there. And then we basically went through. So, I mean, in the last 8 years, everyone who knows about marketing and tracking knows that there have been some significant changes. 2015, we call it still the beautiful ad tech days. Everything was trackable. There was some like really
Yeah.
strange stuff going on. Real time bidding, programmatic advertising, some of the biggest traffic producing industry out there. And that changed quite significantly in 2018 with GDPR coming into effect and restricting, what's trackable and what's not. And then following from that, all the restrictions that Apple has put in place with ITP and these technical frameworks, basically disallowing tracking companies to, get the data that they were able to get before. And now just now the most recent thing that will happen is the death of third-party cookies, which everyone is also now talking about. So tracking will again be more complicated. So we always had in the past 8 years to really quickly adapt. And we always saw ourselves, as a small sort of Navy SEALs team that can kind of quickly run from battlefield to battlefield, and not this huge army. So we kind of, knew that the changes were coming. We also had clients. Kind of one of our more prominent clients is Flixbus, and they at some stage they bought Greyhound Bus in the US. So, and they really pushed us. So they've been one of the best performance marketing companies, and they grew with performance marketing and digital marketing quite significantly, and outgrew all the competitors, outgrew the Deutsche Bahn, etc. But at some stage they were looking into offline marketing, and how do we actually build our brand. So that's when they also, so besides the like all the regulations and technical restrictions that were put in place, then we also had our clients suddenly asking us to, okay, how can you evaluate offline marketing campaigns, which was something that we when we started off weren't really thinking about. And that's again where we had to adapt. And that's, I think, our core strength, to be really adaptable, because nobody has really figured out until now how, this whole marketing optimization thing will be looking like in 5 years from now, particularly not, 3 or 5 years ago. So yeah, long answer to your question. Sorry for that, but I think it's quite
No, no,
important
no, it's
to
perfect.
mention that it's so important for startups and businesses, at least for us, it was so important to be willing to adapt and be technically capable of adapting. Because one thing is you
Yeah,
see what's necessary and what you need to do, and the other one is, are you capable of actually implementing it? And for that you obviously need the right culture and processes to attract talent, to retain talent, which we always been
right.
able to do in the technical areas.
Yeah, so let's talk about the team a little bit, right? How big is it?
We are 19 people right now, and
Oh.
of these 19 people, I think like 10, including myself, have had some, industrial level machine learning experience. So that's, I
Hmm.
guess, what makes us quite unique. Also, when looking into our competitors, oftentimes have much, much bigger sales and marketing teams, and we, like, relatively speaking, have a high share of, engineers, data engineers, machine learning engineers, because we know that we couldn't have kept the clients such as Flixbus happy, who was also comparing us to all the different solutions out there, all the US based
Yeah.
solutions, if we wouldn't excel in this actual engineering and machine learning part of the business.
Yeah.
And so for us it's really crucial to have this sort of engineering driven culture. Sometimes when we talk to investors, they are amazed on how few people we have in the sales and marketing department compared to how engineering heavy we are. But so that's kind of the answer to how the team looks like.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, sure. How do you make sure? Because while I was researching about you and the company, I've noticed that you are writing about contributing to the future of work and just the hacks that help you to attract and retain the best talent. So, could you share those hacks and like what exactly do you mean by future work?
Yeah, sure. So we have let me think how to best answer that. So, I mean, culture is sometimes a bit overused word for that. So we rather talk
Hmm.
about like the Atriba operating system, how we want
Okay.
people to operate with each other, because you can have all these, nice keywords on your wall and say, this is,
Yeah.
culture eats strategy, blah, blah, and all of that. But in essence, it's culture is what, really live by and what you do. So for us, one key component is obviously that people have the maximum amount of freedom while working for Achieva, but also maximum amount of self-initiative and responsibility. And that can be challenging for some, specifically for people that have been working at large corporates, because they're not used to that. But for us, this freedom aspect is quite important, and also comes from my personal experience that I think it's really important to let the people decide for themselves when they want to work and from where they want to work. So that ultimate, and we did this long before COVID came into being, and everybody went into full remote. We had our people, work from wherever they wanted to. And I think that's one that doesn't sound like a unique HR thing anymore today. But adding to that, we were also always looking into having, the people take on as much responsibility as they want to, and really, understand also the context that we operate in. So meaning we are very transparent with regards to our financials. We talk, like we have a weekly meeting where we talk about how the business is going, what churns have happened, what, sales, how the sales pipeline looks like, all of that. And I think, because if you hire talented people, they will quickly understand if you try to bullshit them or sugarcoat things that
Yeah.
are really going bad. So I think that's important. People will appreciate it if you're being honest to them. Sometimes it leads to people leaving the company because they decide for themselves this is not the right place. This is going a bit too much into a roller coaster direction.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I think that's much better than trying to keep them on no matter what happens. And yeah, so that are the most important aspects in terms of our operating system. So we also in HR interviews we work with something concept called desired behaviors. So instead of making it fluffy and say, okay, this is our culture and we want people to have a maximum amount of self initiative, what we'd rather do is tell them exemplary what are desired behaviors and what are undesired behaviors. So for example, yeah, sure, you can take a day off very spontaneously. You can work from the Baltic Sea or Northern Sea if the wind is good and the waves are great. But if
Yeah.
people then have to wait for your input, then that's not so great. If they, other team colleagues cannot continue their work because they have to wait for you getting off the water, that's not so good. So, make it very specific instead of having some fluffy culture proposals out there.
All right. Okay. So full transparency. I think it's
Yes.
it's perfect. Like you go into your new job and it's better to have all the cards on the table and like know what would be tolerated or like what they like or where you would not be understood
Yes.
very much, right? How to yeah,
Yeah.
how you said how to operate with other people. I think that's brilliant. But
Yeah.
there was something that you mentioned before. You said when we were talking to investors, right? And I know that lately you went back to bootstrapping, but you raised a couple of million in 2021. So, yeah, from 2021, everyone says, the VC climate and just like the whole investment situation just went downhill. And companies have to now be more profit focused, revenue focused. So basically, just do everything to survive. So,
Yeah.
how has it worked for you with that investment? Did you have to adjust and like really spend very frugally, very cautiously all that money, or did you go into profitability fairly fast after investing this money?
Yeah, good question. So, I mean, we also raised money before our
Mhm.
last financing round. So before March 21, I think was our Series A, I think. So, and then the aim with the Series A, obviously, with investors joining, is the Series B. That's why these
Mhm.
names are out there. And beginning of 2022, so right, yeah, as you mentioned, everybody kind of saw the difficulties with I think the trigger was more or less the increase of the interest rates by the Fed in the
Mhm.
US. So these multiples that SaaS business had went down, and then with that it got much harder to talk to VCs. And we figured out with our shareholders and investors rather quickly that I think it was around April 22,
Mhm.
that Series B is not going to happen in 22, probably also not in 23. Let's just rather reduce burn significantly. Let's try to be more frugally with the money that we have, and maybe see how difficult will it be to get to profitability. And we've done this. I think a year later we had our first profitable month. So it was quite a, yeah, how should I put it, effort-some journey. So we had to put in a
Mhm.
lot of work. Obviously, we had to also we've been really transparent with colleagues that have been there at this time, and we also lost some colleagues because they've decided, okay, this is not the right place to be at this stage. So through that, we obviously also reduced personal costs, and then we've reduced our server cost, which is our second highest, cost, quite significantly. And everybody's done just a fantastic job to put us on this road to reduce burn. And then I think the key there was also for again being transparent about it. Like if we would have tried to sugarcoat the situation, I think in the end we would have lost even more employees, and also the ones that we definitely wanted to keep. But with being that transparent, we were kind of having a good idea of who's really gonna stick to this and who's really gonna follow through and push through. And that's, I think it's a subtle thing, but that's really also what was really helpful for us as a founder team to know who can we actually count on to go through with this. And yeah, it's not that quantifiable, but for me, it was like personally really helpful to know, okay, who can we push through with, who will stick to this vision also that we had. And because also that was important, like we didn't, say just because we're going for profitability doesn't mean that we still that we kind of lost track of our vision to, have the best marketing measurement solution out there and push that through. But yeah, as you said, like we reduced all paid marketing costs. We started thinking about what can we do organically. We at the beginning of this year we started doing a LinkedIn Live event, which is being put out every week. We thought I have had some experience with podcasts, also in a more or less semi-professional way, and what I enjoyed it a lot, like being on the podcast. But what I didn't enjoy about it is all the time for preparation and having to get guests on it, and then it would be sent out every 2 weeks. The podcast would be
Mm-hmm.
released every 2 weeks, so there would be a new episode every 2 weeks. But we recorded it in a 1 month we might record 4 sessions, for example. Then another month there would be no recording at all. And with podcasts, my experience at least was it gets more flowy and much more easier to record them if you do it on a regular basis. So
Yeah.
that's why we decided to do it on a weekly basis and not that much and live. So we didn't have to invest the cost to, cut it and edit it. So just
Yeah.
put it out there.
Absolutely. No, and I enjoy them very much. I actually wanted to ask you, like, do you see, because like the podcast, it's everyone's doing a podcast, right? Everyone wants to talk to cool founders and be out there and like use it for growth, but not everyone understands that it's such a long way and like you have to put a lot hours before it starts paying off.
Yeah.
But with live events and like what we also notice quite a bit, because we started live events just because some founders asked us if we could bring more experts from SaaS world to like share some specific information. Yeah, it works really great. So how is it for you? Like what were you able to achieve with something that, well, again, something that a lot of founders are afraid of because it doesn't really scale, right? So
Yeah.
what is it for you?
Yeah, good questions. They're coming back to this two things that don't scale.
Yeah.
So at the beginning, it didn't scale at all. And still, sometimes we have episodes where just so few people listening, and we're thinking, is it really worth it? Is it just,
Hmm.
for us, for fun, for talking? But I would say right now, and even like 3 months ago, I would say it's successful what we're doing there because we have managed to invite some really awesome guests from the industry, some industry experts from Meta, Google, and also starting to get more potential guests in from the US. And it's funny because we go into the prep calls. So we do a prep call. So first of all, we have to
Sure.
check whether somebody's, whether we can actually have this discussion with them. And they are like, we try to explain to them what they're doing, and they're like, yeah, I know what you're doing. I've listened to like a bunch of episodes. We're like, what? You actually really did listen to it? So we're getting there now that it's somehow being recognized in the industry or in the area and range of experts that we find useful to work with. And we can use it to send it to potential clients. So, for example, one of the guests that we had, he was co-authoring a Harvard Business Review article
Hmm.
about the future of marketing measurement and optimization. It was Igor from Meta. He's a marketing science director there. And obviously that gives us that credibility that he has, then also shines a bit on us if we are able to invite him and have a more or less informed discussion with him. And that we can then use to send to potential clients that are interested in these topics to see, okay, look, we kind of know what we're doing. We have guests of
Hmm.
that caliber wanting to be talking to us. And I think that's one really important aspect about it, not the absolute reach. And then maybe because you mentioned it, one key aspect is this consistency. So I remember my colleague that I do this with, Tim Kleinkamp, and also we do this with Tim Wiegels. They were at the beginning, okay, this is fun, but what else? Like,
Yeah.
how many viewers do we actually get? And they were kind of frustrated. I was like, no, let's just keep going. Like, this is how this stuff works. It's no, really have to be consistent about it. And yeah, consistency pays off with all content marketing things, I
Yeah.
guess. Yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Consistency is something that will get you out there. But
exactly.
yeah, I couldn't help but notice that, well, you started talking about like all the resilience and like all the this business threatening events and like different changes
Yeah.
that you went through. And then you mentioned social media and how, sometimes it's frustrating to see like, oh my God, like this was watched by like 20 people. Is it even worth it? And it
Yeah.
takes a toll,
And
especially
20,
like,
20 might be a high number there. So we had single
yes,
digit numbers.
that that's true, single digits at first only. And then, yeah, like you go to Twitter and everyone's like, that's my new MRR. That's how we grew. That's, we sold and like we got a million new customers. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh shoot, am I behind? Like it can be such a tall. And even though like everyone says, oh, you don't have to like look into vanity metrics so much, sometimes it helps. You can still get a lot of good insights from your vanity metrics.
Yeah.
But I would assume like because you're a founder, it it is an extreme toll on you to just go through all the changes. And you found the company when you had your twins, and so
Yeah.
it's not easy. So again, this is something very important that we started talking about on the podcast and on the conference quite a bit lately. Founders mental health, how to navigate
Yeah.
all this turmoil, and how to maybe find a community or a tool that would help you. So
Yeah.
how do you feel about it? How does it affect you or not affect you?
Yeah, great question. And that's something that is, I think, extremely important for all founders out there because you're putting yourself into a spot that is not comparable to any sort of corporate kind of setting or employment, regular employment setting. And not disregarding, obviously there's some high stress jobs out there and, stuff like
Sure.
soldiers or nurses that see extremely shocking stuff. But just, the pressure that as a startup founder you have at the beginning, if you're first time founder, like VCs, investors will put so much crap on you in terms of the requirements, what they think is, how you should run your startup. Of course, most of the times the ones that have never run a startup but know all of how running a startup. I'm not gonna, go into that dissing mode, full on this mode, but I just remember one VC that told us, I think after the first half year or year, that if we continue growing like that, we should just kill the business because it's not worth it if you're not tripling every year or something like that. And there are
Definitely.
so many other awesome opportunities out there. And that was maybe his rightfully so expectation and perspective, but you know be sure to kind of know what you wanted to do for yourself. So for us as technical founders, we wanted to find a technical solution for it. We didn't care that much about whether we would double or triple or quadruple growth. Obviously, we would
Mhm.
know what it would mean for the value of the business and requiring financing, but we were always very, very much more focused on the vision and the technical solution. And obviously, you
Yeah.
can also tell if somebody tells you for a technically complex SaaS business that you should triple in the first or second year or every year from there on, they don't know what they're talking about because building a technically complex product might just take 3 years or 4 years before there's any significant revenue growth to be achieved,
Yeah.
and specifically with changing market circumstances. So we learned, and I love this term, we learned over the last 8 years to out cockroach everyone. So, we kind of we see ourselves as we're not going to die that easily, and we survive a bunch of other businesses out there. And the key to that is what you mentioned, this mental health and resilience aspect. And that is something that is not easy to achieve. And it's what was really helpful for me was to have mentors out there, founders that have maybe gone through the same thing, maybe 1 or 2 years before I have. I have one or two, extremely close other founders that I can call up any time of the day. We had numerous financing rounds where the one of the investors just the day before we went to the notary said, "Oh, we can actually not invest. Sorry, we just found this regulation and we cannot do it." And the whole financing round was about to explode, and we could have, just had to could have led to us going into bankruptcy. But luckily, we managed to, cope with all these situations. So obviously, experiencing these high stress situations also allows you to develop your resilience. And then, yeah, I think the looking for other founders in your network is extremely important. Just feel free also to reach out. So here's one thing that I find important to mention. So if anyone is listening to that, and specifically also founders and they're into a high mental health stress situation, feel free to reach out directly towards me via LinkedIn private message. Love to exchange thoughts and just talk. Sometimes just talking helps, and just talking to other founders and understanding that it's kind of part of the game. And obviously, at some stage you should seek help from professionals, so psychotherapists or whatever. But just also understanding that it's this high stress. You're not the only one, and definitely not the first one struggling with it. Kind of part of the game. And
Yeah.
I think resilience is what's so important, because there's this talk on one of the biggest success factors for startups. Bill Gross, I can send you the link. Maybe you can link it in the
Mm-hmm.
show notes somewhere.
Sure.
And he makes this point that the biggest factor for startups to be successful is timing. So in timing, as we all know, to time the market, like it's only very few people are successful in doing so. I think it's extremely difficult for startup founders to do so. But what you can do is just increase your time on the market, and then at some stage your timing might be much more better. Then
Yeah.
so for example, when we started, I think we were a bit too early for where the market was. But our resilience and our ability to out cockroach everyone was helping us to on the market just for a bit longer, and then it paid off, because suddenly people were understanding why they should use a solution such as ours. So I think
Yeah.
resilience, organizational resilience, is just so key for this. And if you look at the most successful and longest living businesses, it's always on how they adapted and how they changed their business
Mm-hmm.
model. If you look at companies such as IKEA, for example, how they started and how they changed. Also eBay, YouTube, all of them didn't start with the current business model, but changed it quite significantly at some stage. So that's also an aspect of resilience.
Yeah. Well, I love the term "out cockroach." I'm gonna use it if you don't mind.
Yeah, I haven't invented it. I have to look up who I saw this on LinkedIn from, but I love it. I love the term, because it's so
Yeah.
important for businesses such like small tech businesses, to
Yeah.
just stay on the market for long enough to basically the area where sheer luck can hit on needs to be increased
Mm.
and maximized. If the area where lucky hit might happen is just very small, then you might just have to close down business before becoming successful. But if you increase this time spent on the market and your surface area of being hit with sheer luck, then and timing, I guess timing is just one other term for luck, because it's really hard to
Yeah.
get the timing exactly right.
True. We were doing this event in Barcelona, and as I was sitting at the table with a lot of founders, and we started talking about AI and like how everyone's trying to like understand how to do it, how to bring it to the product. A few founders started to discuss it, and like all of them said, I didn't know that there was anyone else in Spain that was doing this, and I'm so glad to be here and like to actually learn that I'm not the only one struggling. I'm not the only one that doesn't understand what the hell AI actually is and like how it works
Yeah,
and how to use the
yeah,
API or whatnot. And it was
yeah,
such a good feeling that we could bring these people together, and now they have the connection. They may go back to their offices and then maybe connect and discuss it. So the value of these events is just incredible. Like you said, sometimes you just need to talk to realize that there is someone else out there that's just like you going through the same stuff. So yeah,
yeah,
completely agree.
yeah. Yeah, and you can see it also from this aspect of increasing the surface area of meeting interesting people, and being,
Mm,
so to say, lucky of meeting the right person, your next investor, your next employee, your next boss, whatever. And that's why you need to go out there and increase the surface
mm.
area. So yeah,
Okay. All right. I have a couple more questions. The
yeah,
first one
sure.
is, well, if you have a hack for scaling, because, well, you've been around for 8 years and you scaled successfully and you were able to become profitable at the economic situation where people were just not sure what's going on. Is there any hack for successful, sustainable scaling that you could share with the audience?
Yeah, so I think number one would be to be extremely customer focused and don't care too much about competition. You can spend endless hours of trying to understand what the competitors are doing, what their feature set looks like. In the end, it doesn't matter so much compared to what your customers actually want. Talking to your customers as much as possible, specifically in changing marketing circumstances, because we've often fallen into this fallacy of reading something up and thinking this is the newest thing that we should develop immediately, but the market wasn't there. Like customers weren't interested in that solution yet, maybe. So we kind of put it into our vision bucket, but not necessarily implement it right away. So that's my number one hack, and I think probably not the one who invented this, but I knew Jeff Bezos obviously also always said that he doesn't really care about competitors, but just focus on your customers and really, really try to understand what they need and what they want and create value for them. Then it's really hard to fail.
All right. I think that's a good one. Yeah, it doesn't, well, it's kind of, it's said enough maybe, but it's not, I don't know, it's not understood enough. Still, so many founders are like, yeah, no, I know what I'm doing. I'm just going to build it. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
and again, that's this coming back to my first thing with the MVP, and we've done this. I've been involved in projects before that and startup ideas, and we've done this. We've built the best infrastructure for potentially, thousands, hundred thousands of users, and then we put it live, and nobody, maybe a couple of users
Mm,
tested it, but not hundreds of thousands. So that's so important. Talk to your customers before, see them actually using the product, understand how they're going to use it before you build the full scale out system. And not just don't just rely on them telling you, yeah, it's interesting, let me see, but eventually, seeing them creating value out of it, see them actually doing it.
yeah, absolutely. All right. And the last question is something that everybody gets. It's what's so far your biggest win and your biggest failure for the company or for you as a founder?
Oh, biggest win probably the profitable month that we had. So right now we are oscillating just below the profitability threshold, up and down. But yeah, biggest win getting there really quickly, and having the feeling of actually running a sustainable business, and with the like technical complexity and being a deep tech startup. The biggest loss is probably, let me think, biggest loss? Well, kind of every customer that might have churned and we would have loved to kept. That still feels like losses I'm also too emotionally involved in with a client that decides not to work with us. And of course, as every SaaS business, we do have a amount of churn, and that's still the biggest loss is not being able to convince these businesses to continue working with us. It still feels like not a personal insult, but just shoot, we should have done a better job there, and what could we have
Yeah.
done? And sometimes, yeah, as you said, sometimes you just have to accept maybe the organizational structure was not right on the client side. Maybe, I mean, also just right now, to be honest, there are clients that going into bankruptcy and insolvency because of the current headwind that a lot of e-commerce businesses face. So obviously, but still, it to some degree hurts, and just not because it decreases our growth, but more of shoot, we could have not helped him, or we could have not. But yeah, that's still one of the things that feels like the biggest loss, but probably isn't that bad.
Yeah. But then again, it's just like a normal life of any startup, right? They churn, they
Yeah,
don't commit. So as far as you cannot, name any bigger life-threatening events, I think it's just a very normal. So, I'm glad you're there. I hope to see more growth. I hope to
thank
see,
you.
what else you are building for Triba. And yeah, thank you so much for the conversation. I think you've got a great product, great story. Thank you for all the insights that you've shared. And yeah, for the audience, again, reach out to Yanis if you want to talk about
Yeah,
the business
definitely.
or about mental health.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And thanks so much, Anna, for having me on the show and being able to talk about this. Thank you so much.
Sure, anytime. All right. Thank you and take care.